Welcome to the Richard Dolan Show, where every week we fight the good fight. Greetings. Happy to report my guest for this week is someone I've known for a very long time in the field. This is Yvonne Smith. Yvonne is an internationally recognized hypnotherapist specializing in post-traumatic stress of abduction and close encounter experiencers. And she's had hundreds of radio and TV appearances in the U.S. and from South America to Europe, and is an advisor to television and movie projects in the works. She is the founder of the Close Encounter Resource Organization that's known as CERO. It's a support group. It's been going for quite a few years, I believe, and perhaps we can even talk about that. Yvonne, it's so very nice to have you on the program.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I'm very, very, very glad that you're here. You've been in the UFO and the abduction research field for quite some time, and I know that you came into it really through an interest in post-traumatic stress, and I wonder if you can just talk a little bit about that. I do know also you studied with people like Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, absolutely, and Dr. John Mack.
And John Mack.
Back in the day, we all traveled together to different conferences, which I was so very fortunate to have been able to travel with them and sit afterwards and discuss cases, because I was really the rookie, of all of them at that time in early 90s. And when I thought I had a really strange case, I would be able to sit down with David and Bud and John, Dr. John Mack, as we have a drink afterwards, as we kind of unwind at the end of the day at a conference. And I put out, I have this case. I don't know if this is real. And I would present it, and then they would pop up and say, oh, yeah, we have several of those. And so, I knew I was on the right track when I would bounce off my information, my research that I was getting. So I was very happy to been so fortunate to be able to do that. And then Bud basically was my mentor, and I sat in on several cases with him while he was doing the regressions, because you don't learn that in hypnotherapy college. You just learn the basics, and anybody can do that.
Yeah.
But this is such specialized work that, I was again fortunate, and now I feel, it's time for me to begin training other therapists to do this, because here, Bud's gone, John's gone, David, he's up there in years. I know he's still doing some work, and then me, I won't be able to do this forever. But I'm sorry, I think I got off on the wrong track. You had asked about PTSD.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
When you mentioned Bud, oh yes, I love these guys.
No, I'm really glad you talked about it. I don't know of anyone else who actually was able to train with those three. They are the three legends of the UFO hypnotherapy profession, and you worked with all of them. So that really is quite extraordinary. Yeah. But yeah, I was interested in the connection that you have with PTSD, and then what got you into abduction hypnosis, I guess we should say.
Well, when I graduated from hypnotherapy college, I was working alongside licensed therapists to be able to get enough hours for my certification. So I was working in the clinic with cancer patients, which was very near and dear to my heart, because I had an uncle who died very young of cancer, and I wish I had had all that knowledge when he was in the hospital. I could have really helped him even more so. I was with him almost every day. So I thought, I do want to specialize in cancer and helping people, desensitize them from losing their hair, and it changes your life. But it's hard to explain of how I went from that to the abduction work, but I truly think, without sounding woo-woo or metaphysical, I feel that I was put on this path to do this work, because, like I said, you don't study it in school. But when I met Bud at a Whole Life Expo, back in those days it was the Whole Life Expo, and he was lecturing, and I sat in on his lecture. I didn't know who he was, though. It was my mother who said, let's go to Whole Life, and she knew who Bud Hopkins. And so that's why I went. Which is
I
really
thought I'd heard
strange.
that. I seem to recall like
Yeah.
your mother got you in, basically.
My mother, yeah, because she was very psychic,
Uh
but
huh.
in her generation, she would push it away. In her generation, I think she was scared of it, so she pushed it away, and she would get these feelings or visions or whatever. But she was very psychic, as so is my sister now. So we went, and I met Bud, and I was just fascinated by what he was talking about. Eventually I started meeting other people in the field. I think the next time I went to a conference was in Las Vegas. It was at the MUFON conference at the Aladdin Hotel, I remember. And it seemed like everyone in the field was there. I started meeting people, and then I began to get referrals. So I figured, okay, this is great. It'll be very interesting to get a couple of abduction cases, but I'm going to be specializing in cancer patients.
Uh
And
huh.
it flipped. It just turned completely around.
Well, I imagine
So I've
once
been
the
doing
word
this.
got out that here's someone doing abduction hypnotherapy.
Right.
That was it. That's all that was needed.
And then the fact that, I worked with Bud Hopkins. I remember meeting Stan Friedman. I introduced myself, and he goes, "Did you say you worked with Bud?" I said, "Oh, yes." He goes, "Oh, you don't need to say anything more. I will send you referrals." So,
There you go.
it just
It
snowballed
just
from
happened.
there. And that's when I feel that when doors open for you and you're not knocking on doors and you're not, it just, that's what you're meant to do.
Can I
Because
ask? Oh, I'm so sorry. I
I
jumped in too soon.
that's okay.
Well,
That's okay. I didn't knock on any doors. It was just, it was there. So,
how many people would you estimate that you have actually done hypnotic regression of concerning alien abduction phenomena?
oh gosh, I know I've done hours, hundreds of hours of regressions, and I tape all of those. But so it probably translates to over 1,000, maybe.
Yeah,
Between 1,000 and 2,000, because I was doing it full time.
right.
So
That's a lot of people.
yeah, they just hundreds of hours of the regression tapes.
I would just ask anyone listening to put that in their mind, like what it would be like for anyone to do hypnotic regression of over 1,000 people for this phenomenon,
Hmm.
and then once they do that, to come back and tell us that it's all nonsense and it's all in the mind. Like, I just don't think it would be possible.
Right,
It's really easy to
exactly.
be a debunker or a skeptic, but if they've gone through that process 1,000 with more than 1,000 people, I would imagine it would be much more difficult to have that opinion.
And people are amazed with that are not connected to the field. When I tell them how much work I've done, they're just 1,000 people. I mean, that many people have been abducted. I said not only 1,000, but let's talk about millions, around the world. It is mind-boggling when you stop and think about it. But I I told somebody, and I think I was during an interview, that believe me, I would not be in this field for all these years if I felt that people were making this up or, they had some kind of psychopathy going on.
Yeah.
Are you kidding? I mean, why would I waste my time and reputation? Now, this month I'm celebrating, if my math is correct, I started in 1991, so I've been doing this now 28 years.
Yeah.
And my support group, as you mentioned before, Close Encounter Resource
Hmm.
Organization, I founded that 27 years ago, and we're still meeting monthly. And these are all people who've experienced abduction.
Yeah, it's incredible.
So there's a big need for this.
It's
And so,
yeah.
I'm not surprised that your listeners are, very interested in this subject because believe me, I feel that the abduction subject phenomenon is the central part of the whole UFO phenomenon. It's not just nuts and bolts and lights in the
Yeah.
sky. It's affecting people's
Well,
lives.
toward that end, may I ask you, because you've had more than enough time to have a very good overview of what people are dealing with. So I wonder if you can give us a breakdown of the types of alien beings that people encounter. I mean, how many different ones are there? We talk about the grays. There's different types of grays. There's, I don't know, do you deal with
Yes.
reptilian type beings? Do you deal with mantid type beings? Do you deal with human beings? What actually is the breakdown of what people are experiencing?
Oh gosh, yeah, it's really all of the above. We all know now about the little gray guys, 4 foot tall maybe, who are the ones that usually the abductors who take the person out of their normal environment. But then, as I was working with cases, um, people who don't know each other all describe once they got onto the craft, they saw taller beings that looked like the little gray beings, but they were taller. Some had uniforms on that they described, very tight-fitting uniforms. Then there were the praying mantis seems to be always there, and he seems to be in charge. And very often, he's not touching the person. He's not performing any of the experiments, but he stands aside, like in the side of the room, side of the table, and it's almost like he's giving direction. And as we know, they communicate telepathically. So, but he seems to be always there. And I always say he because it always seems to be a male praying mantis.
Okay.
Then there's the very tall female type being who wears a long white gown. Often she comes in and she will soothe and calm down the there's these tall beings, tall white beings. There's the
Now wait, so tall white, are they human-looking beings? Are they something else?
No, they look very alien, the face, but very tall. And this one is funny because I get this from just about every case. The person will say, someone else just came in, and it's a female. Often, though, it's not always the tall white one, but another being will come in, will look like the other taller gray beings, but she has a female energy to her. They say, she doesn't look any different from the others, but I know she's female. She seems to be the one to come in and soothe the person.
Okay.
But then there's another type that comes in that the abductee recognizes from very early childhood. And it's that being that's been with this person throughout their entire life.
Okay.
They're not afraid of this person. It's very familiar. It's almost like family, and they become very emotional about it. Now, these tall white beings, I know I read a few years ago that I met Charles Hall. I don't know if you interviewed him at all, but he talked about coming across these tall white beings in the Nevada desert when he was in the military. Thought that was very interesting, but and I believe he said they looked alien.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
That is my understanding as well. Yeah.
Right, okay. It's been a few years since I've spoken to him, but then there's the reptilian. The reptilians are there, but I don't seem to come across the reptilians or my clients who are describing their experience as much as the other beings that I mentioned. And then definitely the very human-looking beings, which we feel are the hybrids, are the perfected hybrids.
Mm-hmm. So you're the people that you regress do to some extent describe all of those types to a greater or lesser extent.
Yeah, and they all seem to be working together many times. They're on the ship,
right?
Then all these different types are there, but it's the taller grays that seem to be the ones that are performing all the medical experiments and procedures.
I recently chatted with Dr. Jacobs about his research and his conclusions, and it seems to me what you're describing is pretty much in line with his observations that he's gotten through the regressions that he's done, and the different types of beings. He also has concluded that the mantid beings are the ones in charge. They seem to be running the show. And he further concludes, at least this is his opinion, that the mantids are really the ones that actually created the various types of grays through, as worker species for them. And I mean, I don't know if you've really gone down to that type of conclusion. Do you have any opinions on that sort of scenario?
That David's saying that he feels the mantids are created.
Yeah, right. That they're
small.
His this is really his hunch or his assessment, I guess we could say, that the grays are worker species created essentially by the praying mantid type beings that, in his opinion, are actually running it. His opinion, incidentally, he bases it on the fact that the mantids seem least like us, like human beings, morphologically or anatomically, and that he therefore thinks that the grays are actually some kind of alien human hybrid, that they're created with a certain amount of our DNA, but they're a completely worker species.
Yeah, I feel that, and I know that I've heard other people, experiencers, talk about that. That they're the small ones.
Yeah.
That take the people. They're very high mentality type, and they always say there's no emotion or anything to them. Right. So that does make sense to me. As far as I haven't come to any conclusion as far as the mantis creating them. I mean, that's always a possibility, but
it was just his. Yeah, that was kind of I think he was just trying to look at it as logically as he could, and I think that was his assessment. But I didn't know if you had an opinion on that. What I would really like to ask you, though, is in the abduction field, there really seems to be such a rift between two schools of thought on this. There's people like David, and then there's folks I chatted not long ago with Barbara Lamb, who you know her very well. Also, Barbara's very lovely, but they have often a different kind of perspective on this. And there's even folks like Mary Rodwell and other people who've gone into this field and have very different conclusions about what's happening with the experience phenomenon. And on the one hand, there's an opinion that these beings are engaged in clandestine activity that seems very suspicious, and indeed, in David's opinion, is really a bad thing. It's a very bad omen, and they're up to some very, very nefarious things. And whereas other people will talk about how these other beings are here to elevate humanity and to help us achieve whatever next stage of development we're supposed to achieve. So there's that, and I just wonder, what is your take on all of that? What do you think? Is it one or the other, or is there elements of both? And what do you think about this?
Because I'm always the very human question. That we always want to know: is it good or is it bad? Is it evil? I tell people, they're not. It's neither. They're not. I don't get that they're evil, but they do have an agenda that they've been carrying out for a very long time. And I feel, after doing all of my work, is that the hybridization program is very central to this whole thing, to their whatever their agenda is. And none of us know what the end game is. We don't know. It's all speculation. I don't think it's one or the other, Richard. I don't think they're just evil. I mean, yes, what they do, how they perform all of their, their functions, where they're taking people basically against their will, because people don't know what's happening to them, especially way back in childhood, because this usually begins in childhood, and they're made to forget their experiences. They're not that effective if someone like me can get into their, subconscious and start pulling up the information. I don't think they're meant to. In a way, I think they want us to know what's happening. They want people to be aware of what's happening to them. And
Really?
that goes into they want to raise our spirituality, our awareness. They definitely are concerned about how we're treating our environment. And they've been giving messages for all the years I've been in this field to experiencers about how we need to clean up our act, basically.
Well, this might be a
And
good
that
chance
was,
to talk about your book, Chosen, because this is a theme. I'm holding it in my hand, and I'm sorry to interrupt you again.
that's okay.
You co-authored this book. It's called Chosen with James P. Lau, subtitled From the Alien Hybrid Program to the Fate of the Planet. And in this book, I mean, this is a very important theme I've discovered, which is that a lot of these people that you've regressed have this message that they're getting from these other beings, and it concerns the fate of the planet.
Yes. Yes, and I just watched a news report last night. I should have recorded it, but the scientists are basically saying that our situation with the planet, with the warming of that our oceans are becoming warmer than they've ever have before. That in our Antarctica, the glaciers are melting at a very high rate of speed, which is going to raise the ocean levels. I mean, I'm watching this, Richard. I've been watching the news about this, and I'm thinking, oh my God, is this what the experiencers are feeling or sensing or being told? Because it's alarming to me, Richard, because I'm listening to people one-on-one in very private sessions, and then what they're saying, they have no idea that I've heard it from several other people who they don't even know. That's why I felt an urgency. I called it the urgency, but I felt an urgency that and I spoke with Jim about it, Jim Lowe, my co-author, because he's an experiencer. He is going to be retiring from his law practice soon because he feels an urgency to do the work that he's supposed to do in the UFO field, which is amazing to me because I've heard that from many other people, that their present occupations aren't important anymore. I mean, I have people who make six figures, Richard, live in Beverly Hills here in Southern California or Bel Air. And I had a couple of them, they don't know each other, but both of them told me that they feel that they're not doing enough for the planet, that their work isn't important anymore, that the money is, it's been nice, but it's not that important anymore. And I find that to be so amazing, and it's pointing to something.
But you're indicating that they're getting these messages from these other beings?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. That that the experiencers have been contacted. It's like they're bringing all these people together. And Richard, that includes me and you and Tracy and our other colleagues. Why are we in this field? We're trying to put out the word here that this is real. And this is difficult. We put our reputations out there. I mean, my marriage broke up because of my research, because of my work, and others, Bud Hopkins and John Mack, others. It affects relationships and it affects a person's life. So I wanted to know how many other people are feeling this way. And I did hear, when my book came out, I did hear from other people saying, oh my God, I've had this feeling, and that I'm supposed to be doing something, but I don't know what it is. And I heard it for about a good solid, I think, 4 years before I started writing the book, because I thought something's going on.
Okay.
So I think it's all the above. They're doing clandestine taking of people, examinations, taking our DNA and all of that, and creating a hybrid race. That to me that's definite. People have all said they've seen these very strange babies. They're taken up several times to meet their hybrid children. They're told they have to bond with these children. Now, what is the ultimate goal? What's the end game for these children? I know David has his own theories about that, because I read his book. Is it Aliens Among Us?
Well, Walking Among Us.
Or walking among us,
Yeah.
right. And that's, a little unnerving. And maybe I want to just stay positive
Putting it
about
mildly,
the
yes. It's
outcome.
unnerving.
Yeah, I don't want to dwell on that. Plus, I'm afraid to alarm the experiencers because so many people are coming forward now because they feel that they put this on the back burner for so long. They told me I need to know what's going on with me because I'm supposed to talk about it or I'm supposed to lecture about it. I mean, they feel they're supposed to do something and they don't know what it is yet. Some of them have come where they, like Jim, he's doing his own work in this now after 40 years of being in his law practice, and other people. So I'm hoping that this hybrid race will be, and I think they are here already, but living among us for whatever reason. People have told me that they feel that they have come across a hybrid here walking among us where you would walk right by them and you wouldn't even think anything of it. But you stop and talk to this person and there's something very different about them. One of them said, I feel like he was reading my mind, like he could look right through me. There was something very different.
I've heard this myself, and I'm not even focusing on abduction research, but I've definitely come across those stories. I wonder about a few things here that you're touching on. The nature of these other beings. Like when I read some literature, it's as though these beings have no emotional empathy whatsoever. They have no creativity. They have no art. And then when I come across other accounts, it's as if they're just all loving and they only care about us. And the disconnect for me is extreme. And I find myself really wondering what is actually the truth on this matter. I don't know if you can answer that, but I'll ask you well, you probably can answer. There's one other question that comes to mind about the hybrids. And this is a more kind of a matter-of-fact question. And I'm curious if in your research you've had evidence that the hybrids are created only on the craft, which is what, when you hear David talk about this, that is his assessment. Or there are other people who conclude that the hybrids actually are born often into human families and then discover along the way that they are alien human hybrids. And that's a completely different scenario because in the one, they're raised in a non-human environment without any human social skills. And so this is why, like, when you read Walking Among Us, the hybrids that people claim to encounter, I mean, they're utterly incapable of any kind of normal social interaction, it seems to me. But they learn quickly because they're telepathic, and so they're basically like sociopaths, psychopaths, faking their way through everything. But then, I mean, that's really how it is. But then you have the other type description where they're born into a human family, and so they grow up with normal emotional responses, and you can deal with them because they've been acculturated and they're psychologically kind of normal. So, what is the deal? Like, are the hybrids born on the craft? Are they born here with human families? I mean, do you have any hints in your own research with your folks?
Yes, I think it's been both.
You do.
Believe it or not, yes, I mean, and I think it was my first book of Chosen, and I think it was the same cases I have in my new book, Chosen, but there have been accounts with women who were taken aboard and they were implanted there with a fetus or half human, half alien, and then subsequently they're abducted again and something is removed from them. I mean, they're describing something being pulled out of them. So I think that happens, of course, on the craft. And then the people have described, I even use it I have visuals, for my lecture where people are describing men and women of hundreds of tanks with these little strange beings in this liquid, And this is I've heard this so many times. So something is happening, of course, on the craft.
Is there any scenario in which that doesn't sound creepy as hell? Like that is the ultimate creepy. I mean, there's just no good picture I
Yeah.
can. There's no good way to put that. It seems to me.
No, it's like, and it's so hard to talk about this. That's why when I'm doing, back in the day when I was doing a lot of talk shows, I did want to approach this because as far as the hybrids, because that's way beyond, people aren't even looking up in the sky thinking there's anything strange flying around, and then much less they're going to think about, what are they going to think about? Women are being impregnated and having these half alien, half human babies. It's so sensational. I always wanted to stay away from that. But yes, it's very creepy. I mean, to think that they're being created and they're in these tanks or cylinders until they're able to function on their own. But then over the years, and it seems like the past maybe 10, 15 years, something like this, I started working with women who have felt that, and men too, I mean the fathers have felt that they were abducted, the women were abducted, their wives, and the fetus was manipulated, the DNA was manipulated while they were being abducted, and this was their human baby. So they tweaked them in a certain way.
Oh, that's interesting.
And here babies, like some of the babies are born it's like, oh my God, he seems to be very advanced. They're very intelligent, very psychic. And maybe that's what some people refer to as the star children or indigo children, or
right.
I think it's all the same, to tell you the truth.
Now,
I don't know why we put labels on things, but
just a way to brand a new book.
From all that.
Can I ask you?
Yeah.
So this information about, because this is a new interesting twist. So someone would be pregnant, human mother, human father, and then it would come out. I'm assuming this would be through a memory unpacked through hypnosis, that they would remember an abduction experience while pregnant and recall this procedure. That's how this comes out.
Yes. And it had, and I didn't hear this, even like during my research and all what was coming out in the regression from the very beginning when I started doing this. But like I said, maybe the past maybe 15 years or so, and I thought, oh my God, they're manipulating the pregnancy, and the babies come out normal looking, but they're advanced. I know several people said, oh, he's walking before my other one did, or, they're talking. I mean, it just, and it may not be anything. I mean, it may just be, that's that child. But, these mothers, these parents are definitely experiencers.
Okay.
So, and I could only talk about where the research has been taking me.
Right.
And when you hear it, if I just heard it once or twice, I thought, okay, no, I got to put it on the back burner. But when I hear it over and over again, that's when I know, okay, something is up here. They're doing something here.
I have another question. Hope you don't mind. I keep you're prompting me to think of these. So, do you find a consistency or a difference between fully consciously recalled memories that people will have of experiences and what is achieved through going deep into hypnosis and regression? And I'm saying this because I've wondered if it's possible that consciously recalled memories are, like, the question is, are they better or not as good as what is achieved through hypnosis? And again, one could argue that hypnosis is actually more effective because if you're remembering something at a superficial or a conscious level, is it possible that it's not accurate, and that only through deeper hypnosis do you actually get to the truth? Or is it possible that the consciously recalled memories are more accurate and the hypnosis is less accurate? And I just wonder if you have opinions on this.
Well, I feel when people have conscious memory, and they do, they don't come to me with a completely blank mind and say, I
Hmm.
want to see if I'm abducted. I mean, something happened to them. There's something that they remember, but usually people will remember, say, the beginning of an abduction or the very end, or they'll have more memory with that. But you can't rely on just the conscious memories, because when I have taken someone through the regression, through the hypnosis, there's a lot more detail that comes through. And it's either our subconscious blocks it, because it'll block any type of trauma that we go through. That's its job. And or the alien beings will block their memory, telling them that they're not going to remember and so forth.
Yeah.
So I feel that you can't just rely on the conscious memory, because there's a lot more detail in there if something indeed did happen, if they were in fact abducted. And then, with, like you mentioned earlier about the people who said, oh, they're here to help us. I've had nothing but positive experiences.
Right.
And I've heard that over the years in some of these conferences. And, I don't take that away from people, of course, but I feel very strongly that everyone who has had this experience, whether they say it's, with positive or they were traumatized or whatever, and the ones that are saying that they're very positive, because I've spoken to many of them, that they also have undergone the examinations and experiments that everyone else has gone through, that they blocked it, or they're just relying
Okay.
on their conscious memories. Because unless we're, again, I mean, it's a speculation, because they're not telling me anything, but it could be a completely different group that I'm not dealing with, of course, because people will come to me because they're traumatized. They don't come to me when they're totally happy,
Yeah.
So it's so, oh gosh, this work is so difficult, because, I, like everyone else, want definite answers, and I can only go according to when I'm interviewing people, when I'm working, one-on-one with people. But what I don't like is when I hear a person who claims to have nothing but positive experiences to tell another person, "Oh, don't be traumatized. You'll get over
Yeah.
that, and they're wonderful. You'll see." And it just in during my support group meetings, I don't allow that, because everyone's at a different level with this. We all handle trauma differently. We all grieve differently. Everybody has to have their opportunity to work through this.
Right. In the book Chosen, your co-author referred to you, noted that you were referred to often as Switzerland because you're really good at taking a neutral position as much as possible, and I can appreciate that. I definitely in an area where there's so many strongly held opinions, and abduction
Oh yes.
is, I mean, I don't know if there's any that where it's really can be more divisive in terms of, it's almost like an ideological divide to me when I hear people talking about abduction. And I really mean ideological in the sense of, like, you could almost say liberal and conservative, honestly. I'm sure you've thought of this a lot. Like, there's the people who are like, these other beings are out here to get us and we need to defend against them. And then there's others who will be like the ultra liberal approach, saying there are, don't be fear based. They're here to help us. And in
Right.
fact, we're going to ascend because of their help. And so it's like, I don't know if there's a bridge long enough to bridge that gap in the opinion.
Oh, I don't either. I just want to make sure that everyone is allowed to have their own, feeling about this, to be able to work through this. I've had a lot of members in Zero come and go over the years, and some of them come in, most of them come in very troubled and traumatized, because that's when I invite them in. Like, you're going to meet other people. You're not alone with this. I have a new person that just came in, and he's absolutely angry. I mean,
Right.
angry with this. And I've seen this before too. So, yeah, I don't know. And that's the thing is that none of us really know for sure. We may all be off track. Like I said, we don't know what the end game is. And that's what's a little unnerving, especially when reading, I think when I first read David's book, The Threat,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then he came out with Walking Among Us. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's kind of, like you say, creepy. I'm not sure if I
indeed.
want to go that route.
I'm holding in my hand another book, which everyone in the abduction field and experiencer field has talked about. That's called Beyond UFOs. It's by FREE, the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, or Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Encounters. And I noticed, like, your name, I don't see your name in here. And I'm a little bit annoyed at them for not having you in here. That's my own opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think they should have had you in here. But I just wanted to ask you about this. I don't know if you formed an opinion about this, or I don't want to be ambushing you with a question here. But one thing that is very obvious about that study, it's a very, very big fat book. There's a lot of information in here, and I'm not completed reading it through. There's a lot of really good information here, but what stands out is it's a very upfront statement about the abduction experience or the encounter experience. And what they're really stating is that the experiencer phenomenon is overwhelmingly positive. And this is, I think, their single most powerful statement of the book, and it's their underlying thesis, which is that, and they've talked about how abduction phenomenon really gets a bad reputation, and there's a lot of fear-mongering and fear-based conclusions, and we've had this study where thousands of people have completed their online questionnaire about their experiences, and we find that it's 75% or so positive. I'm not seeing a lot of evidence that there's been a great deal of hypnotic regression done to the people who've submitted their experiences, and this is why I wanted to ask you, is there a difference between consciously recalled memory or not? And I mean, I just really wondered about this study, and if you need more time to formulate, because it's pretty new, and I don't really know what your thoughts are about this, but I thought I would ask about it.
I was sent a copy. I think Ray Hernandez sent me a copy of it.
Yeah.
It's so huge that I haven't even. Plus, my eyesight's getting so bad. I get books on my Kindle now. I hate to admit that, but and it's probably why. Maybe it's the reason why he didn't put me in the book. Not that I'm fear mongering. I don't think I do that. I don't think I've ever done that. But I've never stated that abduction experiences are all positive.
Yeah, it's not about fear mongering. It's about truth, right? I mean, it's about getting to the truth.
Where the research is taking me. It's about what these people, experiencers, are experiencing within their hypnotic regression and going through the fear and the trauma again since they were children. Now, I can't ignore that, Richard. I can't ignore what people are describing going through when they're lying on the table and they can't move. I'm not saying, like I said, I did state I don't think they're evil, but they're carrying on an agenda. And I can't say, because I feel I have a responsibility to these hundreds, thousands of experiences that I've worked with, that I have to take a stance where, no, this is not all positive. Mm-hmm. Then I'm disregarding the people who are having PTSD. That doesn't make sense. I'm a hypnotherapist. I mean, that's my job, is to work with them to relieve that PTSD.
Yeah, it sounds like, I think I really like your approach. I think you're appropriately cautious in forming conclusions about this. Am I right in assuming, like, you don't You don't really have
Yeah.
a kind of hard and fast end game for these beings, or are you kind of leaving it open as to what you think is down the road here? I mean,
Oh,
the purpose of the
absolutely. I mean,
hybrids.
I put in, as I wrote the book, my new book, Chosen, that because I was hearing people talk about something's going to happen, something's happening. As you read in there, I had put out an email to all the serial members. Have any of you experienced, like I call it the urgency? And I put out questions, and I got back several responses because I was hearing them from my new clients coming in. And that's when I said, I got to put this out there because they're getting these messages. So I was following where my research was taking me. And
Yeah.
I can't, I don't know how people draw a definite conclusion in this because, like I say, I ask them for answers all the time, but so far I'm not getting any answers from them, but I'd sure like to know where this all is going to go, where all these hybrids, what are they all going to do here on Earth. I don't feel, or maybe I don't want to feel or think that it's going to be invasion of the body snatchers type scenario.
Sounds like you've wondered.
I certainly hope not, really, because, oh my gosh, I mean, when you think about the millions of people involved in this, I mean, worldwide, you've traveled, and I've traveled, I get people from everywhere, not speaking English, and something resonates with them, and they're explaining the same type of experience that we have here in the United States, and they're doing it through an interpreter. So I was just amazed at what I was hearing.
It is. We're dealing with something that's so elusive, and I mean, I guess it's got to be frustrating for you, even after all these years. Like you've delved so deeply into this, and I know there are still questions that remain as to what exactly are we dealing with. But I will just be honest with you. I don't really see this. I don't see a lot of love and light in the phenomenon coming from these other beings. My own take has, I don't want to editorialize here, this is for me to interview you, but I've not ever seen a great deal of evidence that these other beings, A, have really deep and profound loving emotions, or B, really are particularly concerned with elevating us into whatever dimension they were. I mean, there's a lot of folks out there who believe that this is what that the plan is, and I've never come across research that really makes me feel, yes, this makes sense. I've just not done it. Whereas when I encounter abduction researchers like yourself, I've never ever felt, I've listened to you speak many times, and I've never ever gotten from you that you're pushing any agenda one way or the other. I've always felt you're very detached. And these beings that come through in the regressions that you're doing with your people, they do tell a consistent story, and I don't see how they're here for our benefit. I don't know that if they're here to harm us necessarily, but
Right.
I certainly don't see how they're here for our benefit. I've not really gotten that. But
I can totally understand that. Totally.
The thing about the messages and the urgency, and we've got about 5 minutes for this segment, so I just wonder if it was the one element in Chosen, actually, in your book that I thought, I don't know how persuaded I am that the urgency is actually a real thing or not. I mean, on the one hand, anyone looking around our world realizes we've got serious problems. So on that level, there's an urgency to fix a lot of things. And our infrastructure, our civilization, it could be quite brittle, to be honest. So there is that logic to it. On the other hand, as far as I know, I mean, people have been getting these types of messages, even back in the 1950s, contactees were saying that, the Space Brothers are warning us against nuclear proliferation and this type of thing. So I don't know if is it really a new message or not? And I'm not, if we've had this urgency, you say in your research that it's a fairly new phenomenon. So that's the thing that stuck out with me.
Well, it was, I mean, I know about the, years past when they were claiming that they were getting messages. I only, from what my experience was hearing it from people over and over again for like, say, 4 solid years,
Right.
new people coming in, new people wanting to see me and make sense of what happened to them, if anything happened to them, because they were feeling that they were supposed to do something other than their current career and so forth. That's why I thought, what's going on here? And then I started feeling an anxiety when I started hearing, especially the report last night about, we're in dire straits here with what's going on in our planet.
Oh, yeah.
I just put it out there from what I have been learning, what
Right.
What people have been talking about, consciously and also in regression.
So it's this kind of, from what I recall in your book, the people would be giving different types of scenarios that they're worried about. You yourself said, like, there's not a tremendous unified consistency to the messages, is there?
The consistency is of people wanting to and not knowing that they're supposed to do something. Like
Yeah.
the one client that I mentioned who was making six figures and all, he started working on a program to help the environment. I think he's over in Europe now.
Okay.
Because he feels like he wasn't doing enough, and that's what they're feeling. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. They're not doing enough.
So
And-
something
and
is
it-
triggering. Something's triggering a new attitude.
And one thing that I thought was pretty interesting was, we heard in the past years, the year 2000, everything's going to blow up and computers and all that. Then it was 2012,
Right.
and nothing's happened. And here, when I was hearing this from experiencers, no one gave or has given a specific date on any of this.
Okay.
So I don't know if that
Right.
might mean something. I don't know.
Well, Yvonne, this is so interesting, and this is all we have time for in this segment here. I really want to thank you for coming on here. And do you have I know you run the Zero group out in California. Is there the best way for people to reach you if they want to find out the work you're doing, or where can they find you?
Oh, absolutely. They can email me. Okay, so it's my first name, Yvonne, Yvonne, the number 4, and then PTSD
Yes.
@gmail.com.
So, Yvonne, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
I am so very glad to have had this opportunity to chat with Yvonne Smith. She not only performs valuable research in the area of alien abduction, but she's a warm and caring human being who takes her calling very seriously. We are lucky to have her. That concludes part 1 of my interview with Yvonne Smith. If you want to hear us continue this conversation, you can go to my website, richarddolanmembers.com, where we are going to go even further, and we'll be joined by Tracy for that one. Thanks for listening. And remember, while we learn and grow and search for the truth, let's be good to each other. Later.